big division game. When Dan Campbell did take over the Dolphins 2 games ago, I remind you, Stephen A., that he said, and I quote, "We're going to play by the rules, but we're going to walk that line." And I take that to mean they were going to play in the gray area of the NFL rules. And, of course, in Campbell's first game at Tennessee, Titans coach Ken Wisenhunt condemned as dirty the shot that Olivier Vernon took on Marcus Mariota that knocked him eventually out of that game. And obviously, Mariota wound up with a sprained knee. I did not think it was that dirty of a hit, but still, it was the first indication that Campbell is changing a culture in which during practice they run the Oklahoma drill that a lot of veterans would just say no to. They've conducted rugby-style scrums in practices just to improve their physicality. I don't need to remind you that Mr. Sue is widely regarded with a well-earned reputation of being the NFL's dirtiest player. And meanwhile, allow me to remind you, Mr. Smith, that Tom Brady is protected by what has to be the most inexperienced offensive line in all of pro football, and I don't think it's even close. And if you'll give me a second to run through this patchwork of no names just for the edification of our viewing audience, Stephen A., the only bona fide offensive lineman up in front of Tom Brady is a right tackle that is now forced to play left tackle. That's Sebastian Vollmer, who does have 73 NFL starts. Then across the rest of the line is the immortal Josh Klein with 11 NFL starts. The undrafted rookie David Andrews at center, who's now started 6 games because they played 6. Trey Jackson at right guard has started 3 games, and Cameron Fleming has started all of 3 games. That was your starting lineup against the #1 defense in the NFL last Sunday, the Jets. The #1 blitzing defense in the NFL, the Jets. And somehow, some way, they held up, in part because Tom Brady is getting rid of the football faster than any quarterback in the NFL. 2.5 seconds on average, the ball is gone from his hand. But tonight, the imperative of the Dolphins clearly will be to get to Tom Brady, knock him around, as you have suggested in the past. Make him tap dance like the late, great Gregory Hines in the pocket. So here will come Sue and Cameron Wake and Olivier, and it could be a rough night for Tom Brady. I just hope he's getting rid of the ball quickly. Thank you very much.
Skip Bayless, I think this subject is much ado about nothing, because I think, once again, it's you getting emotional and panicking unnecessarily about your New England Patriots. Let me educate you about these Miami Dolphins, okay? In the first game against the Washington Redskins, which they won, they had a grand total of 1 sack. Jordan Phillips was the one who registered the sack. Over the 3 games that followed, in which they lost all 3 games, including a loss to Buffalo and a loss to the New York Jets, they did not have 1 single sack in 3 games. Not one. If you remember, after this, so that means after 4 games, they had a grand total of 1 sack. And then, of course, Ndamukong Suh and Cameron Wake were virtually non-existent. I think Ndamukong Suh had about 3 tackles. Neither of them were doing anything. Neither of them had a sack on the season. In the 2 games that Dan Campbell has taken over, they have 10 sacks.
Thank you for making my case. I appreciate that.
They have 10 sacks. Don't interrupt me. I'm talking. Did I interrupt you?
I just don't know where you're going with this.
Zip it. That's right. Wait. Wait. It's coming.
Okay.
So you got your 10 sacks. You got your 10 sacks. 6 of them were by Cameron Wake, who's unquestionably their best pass rusher.
Yep.
And Ndamukong Suh had 2 sacks last week. My point to you is that everybody's looking at what Dan Campbell said, and they think that he's tinkering towards, you know, almost crossing that line, crossing that 3rd rail, being dirty. Let's not disrespect the Dolphins. As a matter of fact, let's go out of our way to give Dan Campbell credit. Dan Campbell doesn't mean we're going to play dirty. That's not what he's saying. And maybe Ndamukong Suh might have his reputation, even though I believe he's an absolute stud, and that's why Miami went out and guaranteed him $60 million. But Cameron Wake and all of those other guys, we've met some of those guys, Skip. We've talked to them. We know that from a professional perspective, they've got more class, more professional integrity than that, especially a Cameron Wake. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt, and here's what I'm going to surmise. Dan Campbell said what he said because he couldn't directly disrespect his former boss by saying that Joe Philbin had this team soft, had them looking like they were damn near a flag football team, were devoid of any kind of veracity whatsoever, and we were weak and soft and undeserving of being considered an NFL defense. Dan Campbell can't come out and say something like that without completely disrespecting Joe Philbin, his former boss. Now, say what you want about Joe Philbin. None of us were a fan of his. He didn't deserve anybody to be a fan of his. He shouldn't have got the daggone job to begin with. He was an offensive coordinator in Green Bay who wasn't even calling the plays. That was Mike McCarthy who was doing that. But it doesn't negate the fact that he was the boss and proper professional decorum, particularly from one football guy to another, in that fraternity that is the NFL, like it would exist in almost any sport, calls for you to exercise decorum. And what I mean by that is that you're not going to call him out by saying he had this team entirely too soft. Nobody really wanted to play for him. It was just a match. It was oil and water. It didn't belong. Dan Campbell's not going to say that. So what he's going to do is just remind you of how football should be played, how I'm going to have my troops going after it. And we're going to go out there and we're going to be rough riders. And we're going to play roughhouse football. That's all he meant by that, because to say anything else would flagrantly disrespect Joe Philbin. They'll go out there, they'll try to compete with the New England Patriots. They'll try to get in Tom Brady's face. Being the magician that he is, he'll work his way around it with a suspect offensive line or a patchwork offensive line or not, because he's got too many weapons. All right, we don't know if Deion Lewis, I don't know if Deion Lewis is going to be back.
He's questionable. I don't
he's questionable.
know. Probably game
he's questionable.
Time. Yep.
But listen, a tight end coach, no disrespect to Dan Campbell. I like him a lot, very fond of him and the job that he's done thus far. But if we're being honest, you know, he shouldn't be mentioned in the same breath as Bill Belichick as of yet, of course. We know what Bill Belichick can bring to the table. We know they'll be prepared. They'll play smash-mouth football. I don't think, other than Ndamukong Suh, who's just ferocious and could give 2 cents about anything or anybody when he's on that football field. I'm not accusing him of being dirty. I'm accusing him of being vicious. I'm saying to you, other than Ndamukong Suh, I don't think you have to worry about anybody else doing anything but going after Tom Brady the way football teams are supposed to go after Tom Brady.
Okay, but that's like saying, other than Ndamukong Suh, then when I go out and I need to protect my skin from the sun, other than the sun, I don't have anything to fear. So
with I'm addressing the point.
He's like, well, that's no big deal. Well, it's the deal.
But that's not the Miami. But that's not the Miami Dolphins. That's Ndamukong. You can put Ndamukong on a flag football team, and he's still going to be who he is. That's entirely different than us broaching the subject, acting as if there's going to be a systemic policy implemented to go after Tom Brady in an illegal or dirty manner. I don't believe for 1 second that the Miami Dolphins are going to do that. I'm just saying, Ndamukong Suh is his own man. He's going to do what he wants to do. That's relatively unpredictable in terms of his levels of viciousness, and that's what you have to watch out for. But I don't believe that we have to sit here and concern ourselves with whether or not the Miami Dolphins are going to be dirty and illegal. I don't find them to be that kind of team. We've questioned whether Ndamukong is that kind of player.
Yes, we have.
We didn't question if Detroit was that kind of team, and I don't think it's fair to do that to the Dolphins either. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, Ndamukong has been on the hot seat, as you well know, in Miami for not so far having lived up to his monster contract.
Not the last 2 games.
Okay,
not the last 2 games.
But what I'm saying is, this is a Thursday night national TV stage, their first big moment in the sun this year. And you don't think Sue wouldn't like to knock Tom Brady out of this game? You know, within the rules, whatever. Just
within the
what
rules.
He does.
That's all I'm saying.
It's who he is.
Well, that's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying. But let me ask you a question. Why do we have a problem with that? If my goal is to take you out, but to do so totally legitimately, like I might cave your chest in, I might cause you to have a concussion because the blow that I place on you is so riveting, it knocks your faculties out of whack. There's nothing wrong with that. Anybody that loves football wants to see that from their respective defense. I'm just saying, let's not disrespect the Miami Dolphins by acting like they're willing to resort to dirty tactics just to get at Brady or to beat the New England Patriots. That's not fair to them. We have no evidence of that whatsoever.
It's fair to wonder about Ndamukong Suh, given his track record. I'm sorry. It just is.
Okay, that's fair.
And again,
no, that's fair.
My Dallas Cowboys took down Tom Brady 5 times, as you remember, in the first half. He took some punishment. I thought he took a couple other shots.
Was it remotely illegal?
No.
Every shot that Greg Hardy laid on Tom Brady was totally legal, tototally legitimate. You know, and for all his bluster and viciousness, when he went after Tom Brady, every single thing he did was within the rules.
Yep. Okay.
And so all I'm saying is, if Ndamukong Suh goes out there and does Ndamukong Suh, we're going to say it's Ndamukong Suh. Let's not sit there and say it's the Miami Dolphins, because Ndamukong Suh is his own man, and let's face reality. He is a different kind of cat. He operates differently. He's a maverick. You know, what everyone else does, what's conventional, is not what he customarily follows, and it has worked for him because he was the premier free agent out there and got a $100 million deal with $60 million guaranteed. Yeah. He's doing something right.
I think Jay Cutler would call Ndamukong some other name besides Maverick, but that's just me, given what Suh has done to Cutler in the past.
Well, then the subject should have been about what Ndamukong Suh is going to do, because we certainly have no evidence of what the Dolphins are going to do. We don't have no evidence. Everything they've done is on the up and up.
Again, Vernon was condemned by Ken Wisenhunt. That was a dirty shot on Mariota, right? That's Campbell's first game. Again, I didn't think it was that. It was borderline, but it wasn't that dirty to me. But still,
I saw him tumbling into Mariota. I saw him tumbling into Mariota. That's number one. Number two, with all due respect, let's face reality, because you're very good at doing this. You like trying to peel the agenda from people's statements. Let's look at Ken Wisenhunt. What have you done since you've arrived at Tennessee? What have you done whenever you didn't have Kurt Warner as your quarterback? The record ain't that damn impressive. Yep. So the fact that Mariota was hurt in that game, even though he still played, was something that ruffled Ken Wisenhunt's feathers, and obviously he acted accordingly, one would surmise.
Yep. Okay, real quick, my final, I'll admit this on national TV. I do have some ulterior motive here. I want to plant the seeds in the referees' heads tonight to be on the lookout. That's just me. I want my guy protected. I want them to be on watch.
You want your guy protected.
Yes.
As Ray Lewis would say, he's a grown man. He got to go out there. Ain't nobody advocating to break the rules or anything like that. But I think Tom Brady is more than capable of going out there and handling his business without you tipping the referees off in a quest to heighten their level of sensitivity. Man up. Let your man go out there, be the great quarterback that he is, and handle his business instead of being a wuss and trying to give him some edge because you're looking for the officials to come to his rescue.
Wait, are you calling me a wuss or him a wuss?
You, because you're sitting there and trying to use the officials to help you. You're trying to use the officials.
With it on me, but not on Brady. Okay.
Well, not on Brady. Because you're trying to use the officials to help out Brady. If he's so great, let him go out there and handle his business like he always does. What you worried about him for?
Did you hear the line I just read off to you? Are you kidding me? This is the worst in the NFL. How do you survive this? Seriously, I don't know. But he keeps doing it.
He's not just Skip. He's not surviving. He's prospering.
Oh, is he?
So what are you worried about? He's undefeated. What are you worried about?
Well, leave him alone. This is a serious pass rush.
Turn on the TV tonight and watch the game.
All right.
Stop sitting up there and getting all sensitive, being worried about your guy Tom Brady. He can handle it.
The story.
Don't sit there and sully Miami because you're trying to protect Tom Brady. Don't do that to them. Watch the football game.
Let Molly talk.
The storyline I'm really excited about is if Miami's legit. Dan Campbell has this team hanging up 82 points the last 2 games. They're on this hot streak. The defense is playing well.
Yep.
Are they legit?
Well, I'll tell you what, the odds makers in Las Vegas think they're legit, Stephen A., because the Jets wound up a 9-point underdog last Sunday in Foxborough, and the Dolphins opened up as only a 7.5-point underdog. It did get bet up to 8, but still, there's more respect out there slightly for the Dolphins than for the Jets. I'm surprised by that. Now, I'll just go ahead and throw it out there, Stephen A., like your thoughts on this. I still think New England is vastly superior to Miami. I'm not going to read that much into what Miami just did for Dan Campbell at Tennessee and against the woeful Houston Texans. This is obviously the class of the National Football League. I believe Tom Brady's having his greatest year ever, and I'm hoping that will continue tonight. I'm going to say 30-14. Well, no, I'll go 30-17 Patriots in this game. Sorry.
I like that score. I would pick New England to win somewhere along the lines of 33-24. Ryan Tannehill, his QBR isn't that impressive at this particular moment in time. I think it's only like a 41. Yeah. But Lamar Miller, even though he's averaging 6 yards a carry, I mean, that's kind of helped by 14 carries for 175 yards last week in the first half against the Houston Texans. So it remains to be seen who they are, what they are made of. I think their passing game is relatively suspect. Not as much of a believer in Ryan Tannehill as I was in the past. Let's see what he does. But I do believe that the defensive personnel is much better now than they were under Joe Philbin. So it will be interesting to see what they do.
Brady 8-0 on Thursday nights. I think he will extend it. He seems like a man on a mission, but is this his best year ever? That's our Twitter question of the day. So hit us up and let us know by replying yes or no using the hashtag #BradyBestYear. Coming up next, talk about the best ever. The NBA's all-time leading scorer, 6-time NBA champion Kareem Abdul-Jabbar is in the house. Whoa. Don't miss his expectations for the Lakers and much more.